I wanted to share with you some thoughts in this podcast. I want to also welcome you to the podcast Mindful Conversation for Critical Time. Today podcast, I want to focus on an issue that I call the Republic is in danger. And that is a title of a paper that I just read, but the paper entitled The American Republic is in Grave Danger. And so I am borrowing some of that title, entitling The Republic is in Danger. My focus is not the Republic, rather, my focus is the world is in danger. So yes, the world is in danger. And that is the podcast we want to have today. That is the topic we want to share today. And what we want to say about that, what I would like to share with you is the responsibility we have to promote spiritual foundation and natural liberty in an age of misinformation. It is essential for all of us to check the information we get and to make sure we know where those informations are coming from. See, as our nation has strayed so far away from its constitution, there's a concept that called administrative state that are operating with little accountability to the people who are electing them. And so the question becomes, do we see the threats as the administrative state pose to our natural liberty? For example, one of the issues many experts are talking about is to view the COVID-19 pandemic revealed that there's an element of tyranny and hypocrisy that the government took upon itself to shut down the state and is display what some are calling tyrannical and great hypocrisy on behalf of these administrative state. These are both elected and unelected officials who are operating with power without any accountability to the people who electing them. And so there are many of us, there are many Americans who feel there's a double standard when it comes to the member of the administrative state, and some of which are deemed as calling the elite. There's a double standard, in that the ruling elite is not required to follow the same rule as ordinary people do. And so we need to ask ourselves, are we concerned that not enough individuals understand the threat poses by these forces, this elite, administrative elite in the state, and how they are undermining the Constitution as well as posing a grave threat to our natural liberty as well as what is called the rule of law. And so, as I shared, that I am calling this podcast, the world is in grave danger. You see, while both elected and unelected politicians are unaccountable to the citizen which elected them, this is something that is happening on a global stage, worldwide. Government all over the world are operating without any accountability to the citizens of the country. And so therefore, the rulers of the global tyranny turning the world into a state that is undermined not only the rule of law, but also threaten our natural liberty. They're doing so by reject the separation of power and replaces the rule of law with faceless regulatory agency and extraneous and pernicious ideologue. And that's the threat to our natural liberty. I mean, I'm looking at those there, some of the things I have written. So a question that I've been asking myself, is it too late? Is it too late for us to turn the world around? Is it too late for us to change the situation of the world as it is? I don't know if it's too late, but I can tell you that the world is in grave danger. The growing reach of the elite, the bureaucrats, the tyrannical power are affecting all of us, you and me, and billions of people around the world every day and each and every moment. They are a threat to the very fabric of human dignity and, as I just mentioned, what I consider to be natural liberty. You see, in order for us to counter these threats, we must raise our voices and support, to educate ourselves and to take a stand, to raise our voices, and we need to encourage every citizen to understand the meaning and the importance of the fundamental principle of what I'm calling natural liberty. We must believe that we can defend and promote spiritual liberty from these critical time, and we will do so by encouraging, influencing, and motivating every citizen that understand the threat those elite are posing through these false ideologues all over the world, not just in one country, all over the world, to our natural liberty. You see, there's a steady decline in religious activities. For example, many churches are made it clear there's a decline in church attendance all across the nation and all across the world. And therefore, there's some who's even suggested that the future of Christianity is in danger. And the postmodern generation is shifting the view and influencing the very landscape on every aspect: political, social, educational, psychological, emotional, and every aspect of life. For example, in a contemporary America, there are new trend that emerges. The decline of church attendance, as you just mentioned, are among some of the trend and movement we see that emerges as the religious landscape undergo massive transformation. These shifts in attitude and practice raises very, very troubling question, very vital question about the future of the church, as well as the future of Christianity and the future of the republic, which we call the world. From a cultural and societal shift to the political implication, and the negative attitude toward religion has impacted the church and institution all across the country. This phenomena paved the way for a deeper reflection on the changing values and the spiritual implication of today's postmodern generation. You see, the postmodern generation is changing attitude not only toward religion, not only toward political landscape, but toward Christianity itself. They are changing the landscape in terms of the view of God, as well as the attitude and the criticism toward organized religion. While the decrease in church membership can be attributed to a shift in the populations as well as demographic, because older generation who were once very inclined to be church members are being succeeded by the young generation, particularly in the United States and other part of the world, and the adult population. And these young people, co-hosts, are less likely to affiliate with churches as they have clearly displayed and their decision making and the attitude toward God, the attitude toward religion, the attitude toward Christianity, and let us not forget their attitude toward the fundamental principle of the traditional family. We need to look at the cultural and the social shift that is taking place. The cultural and the social shift that is taking place is playing a pivotal role in shaping the way the postmodern generation view not only religion, not only Christianity, but the way they view God, the very essence of Christianity. There are many young people who say they would like to have a more freedom when it comes to religion and how they express or they should conduct themselves to be part of any specific religion. A societal value and priority, as society's value, I should say, and our priority continue to evolve in this postmodern era. The postmodernists have demonstrated a distinctive attitude toward God, Christianity, and organized religion itself. A significant departure and spiritual identity as they seek, listen, more individualized expression of one's faith. More individualized, not corporate, not a body of believers, but individualized expression of individual faith. One of the forces that is permeated, which I mentioned in our conversation recently, we had an open conversation, it's social justice. This social justice movement, it's part of the postmodern trend, have also influenced their perception, the perception of the postmodernists, the liberal and the progressive, of religious role, inspiring a renewed emphasis on activism and what many social scientists consider to be a false compassion within spiritual practice. While postmodernists struggle with the challenge of the present world, they're also influencing the nation's attitude toward religion that reflect in their desire for more authenticity and inclusivity and a deeper connection to the issue of their own social significance. These things are very important for us to pay attention to as we embark in our intention to promote natural liberty and spiritual freedom. Let's look, for example, the concept of political implication. A close examination of the relationship between religion, affiliation, and political belief reveal how the postmodernist shifting religious practice is impacting their political ideology, as many of them are identified as progressive and or liberal. Liberal and progressive always align themselves with progressive value. They support social welfare, social justice, critical theory, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is known as DEI. They support gender ideologies, environmental protection, pro-choice, instancing, okay? Embracing diversity, they prioritize inclusivity and reject any form of discrimination. Internationally, liberal favor diplomacy and cooperation. Okay, we're talking about the postmodernist and the progressive liberal. The diminishing influence of the churches and religious institutions on political issue might alter the priority and agenda of political leaders, as well as the informations of politics concerning social and moral issues. We need to pay attention to those things. Therefore, these evolutions are affecting the formations of religious influence and the impact religious will have on things like our election. Changing religious landscape in America is the goal of the postmodernists, to change the religious landscape, because religion, Christianity, and God is a constraint for them. It's a refrain for them. It's a roadblock for them to achieve their agenda. The postmodernist generation, comprise the millennial, the Generation Z, have encountered different religious and social experience compared to the predecessor, the previous generation. Unlike the previous generation, the parent of those young adults who have been less proactive on fostering regular religious involvement in formal religious service and demonstrate a religious practice to their children. Many of the religious activity that were once customary during childhood, like saying prayer, saying grace, being polite, and attending religious service, and make God the center of the family, which used to include even Bible study, have now become a rare occurrences rather than commonplace tradition. In this regard, the Republic, America, the United States of America, is undergoing a profound secularized transformation, largely driven by the beliefs and practice of these postmodernist, progressive, and liberal ideologues. As they explore the political identity, a rich tapestry of diversity emerges, reflecting an array of religious beliefs and practices. The postmodernists embrace alternative spiritual practice and personalize a form of spirituality marked a departure from conventional tendency and attitude toward God. These expressions of faith have ripple effect on the overall aspect of religious demographic in this country. There's no question about that. The postmodernist effect on the church and religious institution, for example, because the attitude toward God, toward Christianity, and toward organized religion is having an impact on the overall aspect of religious institution. For example, financial sustainability is another factor that become a pressing concern as various churches, denomination, and institution face a decrease in attendance and contribution. The need to adapt and evolve to this engage and to engage the younger generation is crucial, while the church have to promoting to explore new strategy to remain relevant and attractive to the young generation. Innovative approach to religious experience, such as incorporating digital technology and interactive programming, present an exciting opportunity to connect with the younger generation and new participant. By embracing change but remaining traditional practice, maintain those traditional practice, many religious institutions can foster a more inclusive and engaging environment to foster a sense of community and make young people feel belonging to the community of religious activity. Therefore, navigating this effect require a delicate balance for the religious community between preserving the core value of religious foundation while staying attuned to the evolving needs of these, quote, preference of the young generation to ensure a sustainable and vibrant future of the religious community. Now you're talking about a very delicate balance, and that's one of the challenges the religious community is facing. And so the postmodernist desire, okay, and the searching for identity, meaning, and purpose, the postmodernist desire is to find meaning and develop a sense of identity that encompasses diverse spiritual exploration that extend beyond the traditional value. They're looking for personal experience and exposure to a wide range of belief systems, often influence their pursuit of spirituality. The inclination toward personalized expression of self and faith and their view call for a more inclusive and open-minded approach to spirituality and God that may cause certain Christian groups to compromise their value and what's deemed to be non-negotiable as it relates to faith. From this perspective, the need for open dialogue is essential for the religious community that want to keep its members and yet attract new churchgoers and deal with this wave of changes that are sweeping across the globe. So indeed, the earth is in trouble, not the globe, the postmodernist, the world of humanity is in grave danger. And so, for example, let's talk a little bit about the postmodernists and the new religious establishment, because they're influencing religious activity all across the world, all across the globe. They are all across the world, all across the globe. Until the last few years, identity politics, which is now commonly referred to as wokeness or the woke movement, has avoided serious scrutiny as a religious movement. And yet, even then, many people have observed and had a sense that the woke movement also have a religious characteristic built into it. We have several individuals that have made reference to that. One of the aspect is the fact that when you look at them, you begin to feel that it is not just an academic or social and political at all, okay? But the movement gives the implication of evangelical with its charismatic approach to social justice, racial diversity, equality, inclusion. It gives the aspect of a charismatic movement, and so it does give the appearance of a religious movement. Okay, effort to counter or to account for the religious aspect of this emerging phenomena are already underway. Okay, for example, George Washington University, a man by the name of Samuel Gordon theorized that the moral relativism conservatives fear a generation ago has morphed into its own Puritanism. That's a religious aspect. Another essayist, Joseph Button, to attend a wokeness event and find its root in liberal Protestantism. Another one, Alan Jacob of Baylor University, compared the wokeness to the theology of the Catholic Counter-Reformation. Okay, so you can see many people looking at the postmodernists, the woke movement, and all the elements that attach to it seems to give a notions, an appearance, and a tendency and characteristic of a religious movement. if you will not take part of the recent open conversation I had in the studio in Lebanon, the question I asked was, is the LGBTQ plus movement that's sweeping across the globe, is it a new postmodern religion? And as you can see, I just share some thought. There are many expert, intellectual, uh, describing the woke movement, which is intertwined, interrelated, interconnected with the LGBTQ plus movement to have its own counter reformation and give the appearance of its own Puritanism aspect. Okay? And many are referred to the phenomena as the appearance as a great awakening. And so, regardless of its origin, wokeness is quickly becoming an established faith in the legal and the regulatory framework of the American political system, as well as an elite corporate culture and academia. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. This development already beginning to provoke controversy as the liberal and the progressive continue to increase their influence on the public arena. They strike a colliding with whether they risk colliding with the anti-establishment principle it's adherent to push to enshrine the law of the land. In other words, they will influence, they already have policy making. Okay? For example, I have there on my note, on June 2nd, 2020, a crowd of mostly white people arrived at the library parking lot in Bethesda, Maryland, to show their solidarity for a Black Lives Matter rally. During the rally, one of the organizers had the crowd raise their hands, take a pledge to oppose racism. The attendees obey and repeat the pledge as was instructed, many of them kneeling as though they were in prayer. And there's a video that shows that. I watched the video. A video of the event made its way around the internet, providing yet more evidence that America is experiencing a religious revival on the political left, and that the heart of this revival is the deification of a group identity, to deify themselves as a religious movement. The world is in grave danger, my friend. The Republic is in great danger. What did they do? They're searching for answer to the most pressing question. And as the postmodernists, the liberal, and these progressive racing to find answer for the most pressing question of what's happening in their lives and in the world, and to understand why this global movement is inevitable. Guess what else is inevitable? The idea of one world government. Why one world government is inevitable, and why the world will or is worshiping a false god. Let me repeat that again. One world government is inevitable, and you and I need to pay attention as to why the world is, not will, the world, 8 billion plus, the majority of those woke movement and liberal and progressive are indeed worshiping a false god with small g. Why this new movement are happening and how they promise to transform the human race, why understanding the historical event is key to understand the current events that are happening. Understand the historical movement, understand the narrative, understanding the root. It's key to help us understand the current event that's happening in the here and now. Many years, the world have been warned. We have been warned that we are on the verge of movement that will have cataclysmic effect with unparalleled adversities. Question why our generation is unique in all of the human history. Most of it all, how and why modern technology, you remember? If you recall, one of the characteristics of the noisemakers, I say that how these noisemakers and their subsequent technological know-how are creating the wave of dent, I said, and now I'm telling you to pay attention how the technology, now we're talking not just technology, we're talking AI. God only know what's going to happen with this technology will eventually lead mankind to some of the most epic of annihilation in the history of this world. I am not a doom and gloom, my friend, but I must tell you, I am a realist. When I see smoke, I know fire is burning somewhere. And so here's a question for you and I. Is the world of mankind coming to an end? And now I'm not talking about the end of the world. I know we have, over the centuries, numerous sayers that come and say the world is ending. I want you to be as understanding, critical thinking, paying attention, listen to what these noisemakers are saying to you and I. But we need to ask this question: is this world coming to an end? What is going on in the world? What is going on in people's life, places, nation? Are these movement and event pivotal to a bigger picture? Are they connected to something bigger? Who are the key figures and the personalities? What major event are said to take place in relationship to what you and I are seeing? What is the purpose in putting all those together? The show, the parade. What's the purpose? How do you and I gain reliable insight into the current event? How? Most of all, how do we experience inner peace? How do we stay calm? How do we stay grounded in these days and age? A little over a year ago, I noticed something. I noticed how profoundly society around the world have changed. For example, things like being a victim seems to be a vogue nowadays. There's so many people that I claim to be victim. That's part of the uh, critical race theory agenda. People were being canceled. Words like woke, social justice, systematic racism, privilege, I just mentioned critical race theory, have become part of the mainstream society and the social media and the internet. While many pundits and politicians have now begun to voice their concern about this new ideology, the progressive, the liberal are, and the impact they have in great influence on society as students all across the country. I must warn you, I must ask you, I must tell you, I must share with you, be a student of history. I myself, I'm not telling you how to respond to the world, but I'm just share some information with you for the purpose of bringing some awareness. I am also deeply concerned about the impact this ideologue has on each and every one of our lives. After spending considerable time in study, resolved as I living in this world, look at history, historical study that analyze these movements always have something hidden from both spiritual and historical perspective. Above all, What these studies reveal is what the answer to the challenge of this movement means to all of us. So people are called to demonstrate their courage in the face of challenge and opposition, to confess their faith, and above all, to an all in all cultural war that expressed their love for self aggrandization, to promote themselves, to be the architect of their own life. Those are very, very serious aspects. And so let me ask you, are you complicit? Are you complacent? Do you have courage to get up and face the world? I hope you do, because we are living in a culture with an ever narrowing definition of tolerance. A right minded individual cannot stay silent about these dividing between truth and false. We must examine the toxic root that are behind those alarming symptoms of a world in a spiritual free fall. Why your faith, my faith, and our faith must be in power to engage rather to run and hide in fear. And as you and I take a stand for the foundational value, you will be equipped to defend your principle with confident and uncompromised compassion, not full compassion, uncompromised compassion. You need to know that you will be able to identify how you can respond to the battleground issue of today's, and those will include those things we just mentioned: identity driven social justice ideology that seek to divide the world rather than unite it; cultural attack on definition of sex, men, women, gender, and turn language into a weapon of war. That's what they're doing. Cultural attack on the definition of sex, men, women, male, female, gender, that turn language into a weapon of war. Progressive ideologue that have pushed religious denomination to ultimate desecrate and to violate biblical foundation. And so there's a call to standing firm on today's oppressive world, to stand on the ground, to be firm. Do not be afraid. This is not violent. This is not aggression. This is to stand on fundamental principle, adhere to foundational value. Do not take the silent road, my friend. People everywhere should have the courage to proclaim truth to a culture that is in desperate need for emotional and psychological and spiritual healing. The world is packed with lies and loss. They have lost its ways and lost its trust. Wars and rumors of war, devastating disaster, pressure and persecution, lawlessness, politician, shameless, and lovelessness everywhere. Some days, those things I just repeat seems like new all around. And within this news come the question, what is happening? Are these going to stop? What can I do? Is there an end to all of this? Those are very legitimate questions we can ask ourselves. Where can one find strong foundation on how to courageously stand on these difficult times? Is there a higher standard that can equip with the tools and the strength needed to confidently live a life of ethical and foundational principle. Where can I find these foundational principles to stand comfortably and to trust that my life will not and is not out of control? As local and international events on the news report become more and more troubling, interest in spiritual living continue to dim. When we look around, the world is filled with anxiety and anxious depressions. It's reaching unprecedented high, and many people around the world are beginning to wonder what just happened to us. Are these signs of the time compared with the global event today? Look around, pay attention. And so I encourage you, my friend, to stay strong against these progressive liberal ideologues. In recent years and months, the world has seen a significant increase in the number of open regions, countries, community, institution, organization, even politicians who feel comfortable expressing their allegiance to the politicization of identity, many of which express proud and showcasing the ideological diversity on the global political landscape. For example, even the Pope Francis just recently says that the Catholic Church is open to everyone, including the gay community, and that it has a duty to accompany them on the personal path of spiritual, but within the framework of its rule. That's a quote. The church open to everyone, including the gay community. That's a quote. The Pope continued that he says ministers of the church to accompany all people, including those not conforming to the rule, with the patience and love of a mother. The church teaches that women cannot become priests because Jesus chooses men as his apostle. But the Pope continued and said the church does not allow same-sex marriage or even blessing for the same-sex married couple. But the Pope continues support for civil legislation that gives same-sex couple rights in areas of such as pension, health, insurance, and inheritance. I must tell you, my friend, I have great respect for the Pope, but I think that's naive because once you crack the door open, there is no shutting it. And I know that. The church teaches that the Pope continues that same-sex attraction is not sinful, but same-sex act are. Since the part of his papacy, since the start of his papacy, Pope Francis have been trying to make the church more welcoming and less condemning, including to the member of the LGBT community, but without changing the teaching that urged those with same-sex attraction to be chastened. During one of the event trip during the Portugal, the Pope told a crowd that the church has room for, quote, everyone, quote, continue, including those who make mistake, who fall or struggle, and led the crowd to a chant for a few minutes, todos, 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 which mean everyone, everyone, everyone. And as I just said, I have great respect for the Pope, but I think that's naive. No one will satisfy. I remember when former President Bill Clinton had a policy called Don't Ask, Don't Tell. That didn't last long. They changed it later on to civil union. That did start wrong. They want marriage. They want the term marriage. Remember, we said earlier, they turn language into a weapon of war. Welcome? What do you mean welcome? We want everything. Like I say, I have great respect for the Pope, but that's naive to think that people will say, okay, that's it, we get what we want. We see even medical establishment are embracing the progressive political ideologue. Pediatrician group reaffirmed the support for gender affirmation care in spite of growing state restriction. The American Academy of Pediatrics has reaffirmed its support for gender affirmation medical for children as treatment face growing pushback because many states have banned restriction in the U.S. The board for the group unanimously reaffirmed its 2018 position on the treatment. The American Academy of Pediatrics reaffirmed its support for gender affirmation medical care for transgender children, even as threat as treatment face growing push for ban and restriction from the conservative lawmaker across the U.S. Okay? The American Academy of Pediatrics reaffirmed its support for the gender affirmation medical care transgender children, even as treatment continued to fund, ban the restriction from the conservative, the U.S. board, okay, which comprise 67,000 pediatricians, unanimously vote to reaffirm its 2018 position on treatment for transgender. Even our medical institution. The additional recommendation also reflect the fact that the board, okay, expressed its concern about restriction to access evidence-based health care for young people who needs it. Quote, calling for the restriction enacted by state unprecedented government intrusion. In other words, they want those bans to lift. We therefore need to provide the best and the most transparent process possible, unquote. At least currently, there's about 21 states in the United States that have now enacted law restricting or banning gender affirmation care for minor. And most of those states are facing lawsuit. You see that? And so, my friend, we're going to stop here. The world is in grave danger. The Republic is in grave danger. Our lives is in grave danger. And the question I need to ask you, where are you stand, my friend? We cannot remain silent. We cannot keep quiet. We cannot take the silent roads. It is sad that such basic fundamental principle must be spelled out to ensure that natural protection and the dignity of life. It is shame that we must establish clear and comprehensive language by way of what constitutes a man, what constitutes a woman, according to the laws of nature that are explicitly manifest in biology, is a way of saying enough, it's enough. The world is in danger. Enough is enough. This podcast is a production of End Such Innovation, Conversation for the Curious Mind. I encourage you to subscribe, give me feedback, and let me know what you think as we continue to raise awareness to this critical time as well as this critical issue affecting our world today. Until the next time, listen. I want to thank everyone for listening. And if you haven't subscribed, do so to stay tuned with our future conversation. Again, this podcast is a production of Insights Innovation. Once again, thank you for listening.